and then you follow the canyon down, and this is Heckler Junction State Park. See, by following the road down from Nathrop, there were no roads or public access to get over. This is just a creek here. There was no way to get over to the river until you got to the turn to Heckler Junction, and Cindy said, let's turn there, and we went down and found Heckler Junction. It's north of Stonebridge State Park. We found the Heckler Junction, Colorado State Park. As we were going up the hill, we turned around and looked, and there was a beautiful view of Mount Antero and Mount White. That mountain gained nationwide fame through the most popular TV reality show on the Weather Channel called The Prospectors. We loved watching that show. We saw every episode at least 5 times. These people searched for and found aquamarine and other gemstones on Mount Antero and Mount White. Now we were just east of those mountains, looking for a chest full of gems and gold. Then the gravel road took us back downhill into Browns Canyon and Heckler Junction campground. Here's one of the picnic tables at one of the campsites, and this is where people put in, and there's a trail over there. But it's really a beautiful place, Heckler Junction State Park, Colorado. When we arrived, we noticed people were putting in to raft the river. That fit the poem too. As we were paying our daily park fee, a ranger told us about a hiking trail that was not on the map, but was well defined and started near the picnic tables that he pointed out to us. He said the trail meanders alongside the river for about 1.5 miles. We decided to take that hike and look for the blaze. Cindy followed the trail while I walked with her sometimes, and sometimes I was off in the woods for hours searching for the blaze. We noticed several men enjoying fishing, as we imagined Forrest Fenn had many times in the past. They were trout fishing. We went all the way down the trail and back without discovering the blaze that first day. The next morning, Cindy said our park pass was good until noon and suggested we go back and look for the blaze some more because all of the other clues fit this location. We had begun our search where warm waters cease. We had taken the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. We put in below the home of Brown. Now all we had to do was locate the blaze, look down, and find the treasure chest. I told Cindy I was satisfied that the last 3/4 of the trail did not have the blaze, but that I wanted to restudy that first 1/4 mile of the trail again. So the two of us agreed to go back to Heckler Junction State Park, and that's just what we did. This time, while hiking the unmarked public trail, Cindy noticed a large, unique, circular-looking quartz vein in the rock face. Oh, this is part of the trail, hiking back in there. And this is a circular-looking white face. It appeared that it was carved over many, many years as waters high ran down and cut through the face of the rock. There was also another more prominent vertical quartz vein swirling in the rock beside the circular one. She asked me if I thought this could be the blaze, and I agreed with her that it very well could be. This must be the spot where Forrest Fenn hid his valuable treasure chest because all of the clues fit, and here was the blaze. We'd finally found the blaze, figured out that part of the puzzle. Brave people were rafting the swift, deep water there. They could not paddle up it, just looking out from that rock where Cindy stood, this is the view we saw. Here were rafters going right by. They could not paddle up the river, and there were large boulders all around. Quote from the poem, "From there it's no place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high." It all seemed to fit. And here is the blaze in the rock right here. And here's Cindy standing by it. And all these people floating on past. Cindy stood by the blaze that she had found while oblivious people rafted past her. Mr. Fenn had said he knew people had been within 200 feet of the treasure. In this case, that would apply to hikers as well as rafters. We left that spot to purchase a shovel and another park pass, then returned to spend one more day looking under every rock in the blaze area that could be lifted, but we did not discover the hidden chest that day either. This is a picture of me standing on a rock just outside, just from the blaze. Cindy was standing by the blaze and took that picture of me out on the water. We'd been planning to visit Colorado Springs the next day, so that morning we both got up and dressed to tour that city. Right before we left, we were eating breakfast at our motel when the words near the end of the poem hit me. "Your effort will be worth the cold if you are brave." I told Cindy the water there was cold, and I felt I had to get in the water to find the treasure chest. We discussed how we imagined Forrest Fenn had stood near the blaze that she had discovered, and he simply tossed the treasure chest into the river. He said he knew the chest was wet. Well, yeah, if you throw it in the river, it's wet. So Cindy and I scrapped our plans for the day of visiting Colorado Springs. We went back to the room, changed our clothes into expedition clothes, and went back out to Heckler Junction State Park. I waded in the cold water near the blaze and looked under and around rocks near the shore, but I could not see into the water out away from the shore because it was too deep. Water's high, and I did not have a snorkel and face mask with me. So after a while I got cold. We finally left without the treasure chest again. The next day we did get to visit Colorado Springs for our anniversary. While we were there, we tracked down a different possible site for the chest near Manitou Springs, which is just outside Colorado Springs to the west. But the clues just did not seem to fit at all at that location. So, since our vacation time had expired, we returned to Arkansas and both went back to our jobs. Before long, I called Cindy from work and said, "We believe we know where the treasure chest is. It isn't buried, but instead is hidden in deep cold water by the blaze at Heckler Junction. I just need to look down into that deep water to see it, and I can bring it back home. Why am I here working for dollars when I can pick up millions worth of treasure for us?" She agreed, and that night I grabbed my wetsuit, face mask, and snorkel, then headed back to Colorado alone this time. After just returning from there, I now had another 1,884-mile round trip ahead of me. During my first day back at Heckler Junction's blaze in early September of 2016, I had trouble swimming in the blaze area because of the strong current and deep water. Honestly, I must admit, I felt I came close to drowning that day. So that night, I bought a flotation device and returned to the water the next day. I was then able to float over the area many times with ease with my face mask submerged so I could see under the water, and I used my snorkel so I could breathe. This worked great. I checked and rechecked the entire area for hours, but did not see the chest that I knew must have been put there. I even floated way downstream in the event that the chest had been washed there by the strong current, but I did not find it. I was dumbfounded. I would not have taken more unpaid time off from work and driven all the way back out to Colorado if I had not been certain I could have successfully returned home with the treasure chest this time. But, yet again, I had to go back without that valuable, elusive chest of gold and jewels. Throughout the winter months, even while settling back into the daily grind of work and regular life, Cindy and I continued to think about the treasure chest. We researched on the internet, but approached the quest from the opposite direction we had previously been looking. Formerly, we had sought to find clues that would lead us to the spot where the treasure was hidden. Now we were convinced we had found that spot we looked for. So we looked for statements by Forrest Fenn that would try to disqualify this location from being the true chest site. We found a post where Mr. Fenn had said that if the searcher was standing near the treasure, he would smell wonderful smells of pine needles or pinyon nuts or sagebrush. Was this true of the spot we claimed was it at Heckler Junction? We looked back at photos we had taken from our trip. Yes, there were pine trees and sagebrush all around in this area. This clue alone would not have pinpointed the spot we selected, but it did not disqualify it either. This view is the beginning of the trail at the parking lot and near the picnic tables. There are pine trees and sagebrush all around. And this photo shows the middle of the trail and reveals that there are a lot of pine trees and sagebrush. See, just dotted all over those hills. Pine trees, and then there's just sagebrush to the left and right and everywhere. And then in this picture that we studied, Cindy is standing beside the blaze in this shot, which features pine trees and sagebrush in the area. See, she is right here and the blaze is right here. And look, you can see the pine trees and the heavy loads all around. I'm really certain this is the spot. And I must state right now on June 9th, 2020, that I believe when they do announce where the treasure chest was found, it will be at Colorado's Heckler Junction State Park. Now, one of the basic tests to see if a spot could be where the treasure is hidden is, could a 79 or 80-year-old man make 2 trips in one afternoon from his car to the location carrying the chest and its contents? The answer in this case was yes. It was only a quarter mile from the parking lot. It was flat and simple. It was no big deal. It was not hard to get to. During our post-vacation internet search, we Googled Forrest Fenn treasure Heckler Junction and found an account of a Canadian man's search for the chest. The clues had led him, as it had us, to this same Colorado State Park. Like us, he had searched all up and down that same trail and out into the woods. But unlike Cindy, he did not recognize the blaze when he walked right past it. His online story did not lead us to Heckler Junction, but just confirmed by this other man's opinion that this location does seem to satisfy all of the poem's criteria. So at this point, we wanted to find some confirmation that what we had decided could be the blaze actually was Forrest Fenn's blaze. In one question and answer session we found online, he was asked if the blaze was comprised of many things, like the group of aspen trees, as I had earlier reasoned, or was it a single item? Mr. Fenn's answer was, quote, "No, I would say that it is one item." So our vertical white quartz vein in the rock could still be the blaze then. His answer had not eliminated it as a possibility, but why would you call that white vein a blaze? It does not look like a fire, however, it is like a trail marker, which is sometimes called a blaze. When we found a short audio interview online where Mr. Fenn was asked, "What is the blaze exactly?" he replied, quote, "A horse has a blaze on his forehead here. Rocks that have a white face could be a blaze." End of quote. Cindy and I were sitting beside each other in front of the computer when we first heard this. Our jaws dropped. We stared at each other for a moment and asked each other, "Did you hear what he said?" Then we listened to the recording again and again and again. I told Cindy, "Without a doubt, you found the blaze. Thousands of people have looked for it and wondered about it, but you found the blaze and solved this all-important mystery." Of course, I had seen vertical white marks on horses' faces while watching old westerns in the past, but until I heard it from Forrest Fenn's mouth, I had not been familiar with the name for what that white marking was called. But now I learned it was a blaze. When we went to Google Images, I'll scroll down here. When we went to Google Images and entered the words horse and blaze, this is what we found. Wow. That is what came up. Then when Mr. Fenn went on to state, quote, "Rocks that have a white face could be a blaze," end quote, I thought about how the vertical quartz seam Cindy found on the rock face looks a lot like the blaze on a horse's face. Here's the blaze Cindy found. She's not standing by it in this picture. But doesn't that, I mean, you could compare that to the blaze on a horse's face. We were so excited to get confirmation that our location and Cindy's blaze were correct that we could just not wait to get back and search those deep, swift, cold waters of the Arkansas River again. But we had to wait. It was still wintertime, and Forrest Fenn had warned people not to search for his treasure during the winter. We agreed. Since we were certain we had the correct spot, I began to wonder why I didn't find the chest there under the water on my first trip when I had all of the right gear. The wetsuit, face mask, snorkel, and flotation device had enabled me to study the bottom of the river very thoroughly. I remembered there was a pool of sand in the deepest part of the river, there directly out from the blaze. At the time, I didn't believe it was very deep sand and wasn't deep enough to hide the chest because there were rocks jutting up above the sand in places, and I estimated that it was not a very thick layer of sand there in the bottom of the river. I knew the chest contained 20.2 pounds of gold coins and nuggets plus jewels and other items. Adding the weight of the bronze chest, gems, jewelry, and other items, the treasure weighed a total of 42 pounds. So, it had to be big, right? 42 pounds? Aren't most treasure chests the size of a trunk and are carried by two pirates? That's what I've always seen. And that's how I imagined it. But gold is very dense. And big surprises do, after all, come in small packages. I looked back through our research notes and found that the chest measured a mere 5 inches tall by 10 inches wide and 10 inches deep. So 5 by 10 by 10 inches. In order to visualize just how big, or actually just how small, that really was, I made a wooden replica to those exact dimensions. After I made it, I showed it to Cindy. Then we both realized that this treasure chest was much smaller than most people would imagine. I was now convinced that this valuable little chest was hidden beneath the sand directly out from the blaze Cindy had discovered at Heckler Junction. So, what would be the best way to move the sand in order to find the chest? We own a gold and diamond dredge with a long 4-inch diameter suction hose. Let me show you a picture of it. That would remove all of the sand and leave the chest exposed in just a short amount of time. It is very efficient at moving sand and rocks. We haul our dredge on a boat trailer, and we could launch it at Heckler Junction campground, then float it down the river to the right spot. It's only a quarter mile. Then we could tie it in place with ropes and use the dredge to uncover the treasure chest covered by the sand. It would be perfect because the dredge has an air compressor built into it, and that provides air for underwater breathing through a hookah system of air hoses with a mouthpiece. I've used it a lot in rivers in Arkansas, and it would work great in this clear, clean river in Colorado. But then, if we did launch the dredge and float it down there a quarter mile, how would we get our dredge back out of the river afterwards? The current is too swift to go back upstream to the boat ramp. As Fenn's poem says, there will be no paddle up your creek. I would have to float our dredge miles on farther downstream and pick it up at the next state park to the south with a boat ramp, which is Stone Bridge near Salida, Colorado. The rapids and rocks along the way would likely shatter the plastic pontoons on our dredge. This idea would not work anyway because dredges are not allowed in the state parks along the headwaters of the Arkansas River. Then, what could we devise for Plan B? We could take a full set of scuba tanks and gear and an underwater metal detector. We did not own any of that equipment and would have to either rent or buy them. But the other problem with that plan was neither of us were scuba trained or certified. We would have to come up with a plan C. We decided I could stand partially submerged in the shallower water along the side of the river and reach out to the deep sandy area with a common garden hoe to move the sand out of the way. I could extend the handle's length by sliding a long plastic pipe over it and secure them together with screws. But the garden hose handle is wooden and would float, so we planned to slip weights over the handle down to the end of the hoe so it would dig into the sand at the bottom. I had 2 snorkels. In case I had to get into deeper water to reach the river sand pit, I extended one snorkel tube by adding 5 feet of tubing. I also added a float at the end of the extension tube so it would not slip underwater and cut off my air supply. If for some reason these plans did not work, I could abandon everything except the face mask, and I could just hold my breath and dive to the bottom like a Japanese pearl diver. Our plans were made. We got all of our equipment together. We were ready to go pick up that treasure chest for certain this time. We had hoped to make our trip back to Colorado before Memorial Day weekend, but it snowed up there on May 17th. Since the river there was cold in late August and early September, we knew that the waters from freshly melted snow would be so frigid they would barely be liquid. So we forced ourselves to wait until after Memorial Day for our return trip to pick up the treasure chest. We hoped and trusted no one would beat us to the treasure chest. We booked a motel room in Salida, Colorado, and planned to leave our home in central Arkansas on June 3rd, 2017. But on Memorial Day, we got a call that my brother-in-law was in the hospital in Kansas City and needed my help. He was sick that entire summer, so I stayed up there with him. He passed away in late August 2017. We were not able to go to Colorado and hunt for treasure chest at all that summer. In August of 2018, Cindy and I drove to Los Angeles from our home. Let me see. Yep. That's me on the right and Pat Sajak on the left. And yes, whoops. Sorry, went on past it. It's not the greatest photo either, but I'll try to get it here so you can see it. Yes, we were at Wheel of Fortune. So I had tried for 3 years auditioning and trying to get on the Wheel of Fortune. Pardon these pictures just scrolling on by, but I'll get to a different photo set up here in just a minute. But I tried for 3 years auditioning, and they finally came to Little Rock, and I auditioned, and you take a bunch of tests, and you play a bunch of games, and finally they accepted me, and finally they called and said, can you be in Los Angeles in 2 weeks? And so in August of 2018, Cindy and I drove to Los Angeles, California from our home in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, because I had been selected as a contestant on the Wheel of Fortune game show. After recording, see, I heard they were giving away money for free, so I thought, hey, I'm in for that. Anyway, after recording, we spent a day seeing the sights in Hollywood and Beverly Hills, and went along the Pacific Ocean Highway, and then the next day we left for Utah, and that's where we visited 5 of our national parks in Utah. You know, we saw arches and canyon lands, and we had a great time. We really loved it, and this is a photo of us at Canyonlands. Cindy didn't want a picture of us, but a woman, she was taking a picture of me. Pardon me, this went past. She took a picture of me and said, I don't want to be in it. And then a woman offered, oh, this is your anniversary. Let me take a picture of the 2 of you. So I got her in there after all. So we visited 5 of our national parks in Utah on our return trip as a way of celebrating our 24th wedding anniversary. We decided to swing by Heckler Junction State Park in Colorado on our way home and try again to locate Forrest Fenn's treasure. Since we last hunted for it, he had announced that the treasure was not underwater. I wish I'd known that years sooner, but anyway, so we did not need all of that gear and all, but we decided just to hike around and look for other blazes to see if we could locate the treasure chest. Once we started hiking, we noticed lots of blazes. There were quartz veins in many rocks around there. We hiked and investigated every possibility that we could find that day. And I'll show you some of them if I can get the picture to come up and not go past me. See, here's another. Do you see that quartz vein there and that rock face? First I can't get the picture, then it wants to go away. I'll switch over to a different photo system here in a minute. I got a lot of photos to show you, and they'll be better than these. But anyway, see the quartz vein in that rock? So I'd go over there and look and see if the treasure chest was under it. I thought, well, that could be a blaze, just like a horse's face, the white on a rock face, the white on a horse's face. So we hiked and investigated every possibility. We looked at all the blazes we could find, and when we were finally satisfied that we just could not locate the treasure chest, we completed our journey back home to Arkansas. Once home, and unpacked from our long trip all the way out to California and Utah and back, I began to study the Heckler Junction photos all over again. These rocks had a white blaze across their entire face. Take a look at this next one. This is what really got me to go. And see, I was thinking of just a straight line like on a horse's face. But then, this is the last photo like this, I promise. And then we'll go to better photos. Now we'll go to better photos right now. Well, okay. Look at the white blaze all across his face. See? And over here too. And it looked like a little place back in there you could set the treasure chest. And I thought, oh, I have to investigate that some more. So here's another look at it. You know, all that white face, that is a huge blaze. And I had not investigated it while I was there because I was looking for a straight line like on a horse's face. But this is like almost somebody had taken white paint and painted the whole side of that there. And I looked at the pictures and thought, I have got to go back. I've got to go in there and look. Because it wasn't big. It's not a cave. It's not huge. Barely room for a man to just scrunch back in there. And it doesn't go way back in. But it's a place you could set a treasure chest. So here's the path we walked. And here's this white face up here. And there's that little spot where I believe the treasure chest was sitting. And look, it's not that far above. You know, an 80-year-old man could climb that far. See, if he had just set it on the ground like by that tree or something, well, anybody walking along there would see it. But with it set up there out of the way, just up a little bit, and with this white blaze, you know, he said, if you look at the blaze, find the blaze and look down, you'll see the treasure chest. And so I just imagined, that's where it is. I've got to go back again. See, here's another view. It's heavy loads all around. Look at those rocks. And here's that white face of that blaze right alongside the trail. And yes, there are pine trees and pinon nuts and sagebrush all around. And you can smell the sage when you're hiking there. So here's another view of it. And this is from a little farther back. See how that white, it almost looks like somebody got up and painted it. But no, that's natural quartz crystal and all along this hiking trail here. And there it is again. You can see it from a long way off. The river is to the right. This is where people float by all the time, rafting. And this is where that white blaze is. And so here's another view of that face, and so I went back and I climbed up there to investigate it. And this is the view from up there. So you can see the river, and here's this opening. And climbing over these rocks, getting to it. It's not really a cave, it's just a little opening that'd be perfect to set a treasure chest back in. Look, the anticipation. I was getting close. I took a picture because I thought, I want a picture to show of right before I found the treasure chest. And then